I made a dinosaur chase animation in 2 weeks. From all things I did in that 2 weeks, I cramped it down to 4 tips that are real thing you don't want to miss out on. All the way from turning this into this to rendering your animation while you're still working on it. Definitely, the first challenge was to have a good looking dinosaur. Luckily, I found this awesome raptor model for free. It was excellent and came with a really good texturing. But just like in my Spider-Man video, I knew I can make it better. I started by duplicating the eyeball to create an inner and outer layer. Then I made its tongue a little more wet by turning down the roughness. This model included base color, specular and normal map textures. Using that specular map, I was able to create some variations with the help of a color ramp node and use it for roughness. I kept the roughness low for most parts, especially because I wanted their skin to look more shiny and wet. To add more life into Raptor, I added a tiny bit of subsurf scattering and set the subsurf color to red. Also, using a few color nodes like hue saturation and color mix node, I changed the base color a bit. Increase the normal map strength to 1.1. I like these blue lines they have on raptors in the movies, so I wanted to have something similar to it. For that, I created a new image texture and mix it with the color. Make it any color. What I'm trying to do is I'm creating a black-white texture to use as a mask for those lines. Using this second color, I can make the lines any color I want. Now in the texture paint mode, I select that texture, set the brush color to white and paint where I wanted my lines to be. You can use a softer brush, but here I used a custom blur node I created in one of my early quick tip videos to blur the lines. And again, using color ramp node, I made adjustment to the texture to create more variation in color and roughness. Here I use red color because these guys, they are bad guys. By the way, I didn't plug anything to specular input, kept it at the default value of 0.5. You might think that was it, but I wanted more variation, so I separated X and Y channel from the normal map and multiplied them to create another black-white map to add more variation to the raptor's body. This is not some kind of a new technique. I just tried it, hoping something will happen, and it did. And I like the results. And of course, I can add a lot more stuff like dirt, wounds, but at some point I had to stop. Or maybe I just forgot them. Well, there are a lot more things that happen after the shading, but I am going to skip right into animations because I think this one might save you from some headaches. In this whole sequence, raptors have a few different animations. They mainly have their run cycle and their main action, which deals with actually moving the raptor and making necessary adjustments when they run on different surfaces, making turns and things like jumping. And they also got breathing and a few extra movements in their mouth, fingers, tails and etc. So it's a lot. Instead of animating all those movements in one action, here I break them into layers. It gave me more flexibility because I can go back and forth at any time to change any animation without affecting others. Not just keyframes. I can change the animation speed, repetition and influence by just changing some values. But more importantly, it helped me to keep my priorities straight. I can mainly focus on run cycle and main action. And if I have time for that particular shot, I can come back and add some extra touch with breathing, mouth movement and etc. To get started, hit push down button to create an animation strip in NLA editor. Then you will have the option to change the repetition, blending, influence and etc. If you want to change the animation, select the strip and hit Tab key on your keyboard to go to tweak mode. Then you can change your animation and it will automatically update to the strip settings. To create a second layer or second strip, create a new action and push it down to NLA editor. Change the blending mode to combine. You can play with other modes to get different combinations between the animations, but here combine mode will do the job. Then go to tweak mode and do your animations. This way you can separate your animation into different layers rather than having one big animation where all those are baked in. Now let's come all the way to lighting. Almost every shot of the animation takes place outside at night, which gives the challenge of lack of light sources. Main light source is the moon, but it is not bright enough to light anything, so I had to use some nighttime lighting hacks. Let's start with wet roads. Why do you think every time you see a street at night in movies, they always take place just after a rain? Haven't you noticed that they are always wet? Well, they make those streets wet before the shoot. Why, you may ask? Again, lack of natural light. Moonlight is simply not enough to light anything. You can put a lot more artificial lights, but then you have to come up with reasons for why such light exists in that place. That's when these wet roads comes to play. It creates beautiful reflections and also gives some bounce lights to the subjects, which helps to keep things dark at night as they should be, and also gives the viewers enough light and contrast to identify the shapes in the scene. To add these puddles, you can use wet road textures, or you can add some puddles to the scene using noise texture. Here in this sequence I used both of these methods. When using a noise map, if you have a tiling texture for the road, those puddles can be noticeably tiled. So to get rid of that, here for the texture coordinate I use an empty object. That way I can control the puddles distribution using this empty, and also it will break the tiling pattern. So how exactly do we light our night outdoor scenes? When it comes to lighting at night, it is more of an artistic approach rather than a realistic. Like I said earlier, moonlight is not enough. Why do you think there's a night mode option available in most modern smartphone cameras? You need to give the camera enough time to grab every light it can so that it can produce a recognizable picture. The reality is same inside Blender, but there's no point in increasing the samples or bounces to get more light. So as defined by the movie industry over the years, night light should be something like a blue overhead light over everything. But again, it is your project. Light it the way you want, but make sure to keep it close to the Hollywood night, because that is what our eyes used to believe as night in movies. But here's a little trick. Select your light and create a node setup for it. Using the ray length, you can create a setup that gives you great control over your light, with strength, fall off, and with custom distance. But how about a scene inside a cave? Only light source is bike's headlight, and it is pointing away from the subject of the scene. This is similar scenario to flashlight scenes in horror movies. How do you light the subjects? Use something to bounce the flashlight back to the subjects.
A lot of the movie, the actors lit with flashlights, and I'd wear like a white shirt. I'd be like, point the flashlight at my shirt and you're gonna light yourself. And they'd be like, what? And then I would have a flashlight attached to the camera that we'd put a card on the ceiling and I would be bouncing it off the ceiling.
We can use a similar method here. Use an area light directly pointing at the subjects. And for the shots from behind, the headlight will create a nice silhouette for the subject with the help of the fog. Talking about the fog, yes, it is necessary to have some atmosphere in the scene. Not just to add some mood and mystery to the scenes, but also to help create a nice looking silhouette in scenarios we talked earlier. Also, don't forget to add some particles. If this interests you to learn more about nighttime lighting, check this amazing Unreal Engine tutorial. It is worth taking a look. Put all those aside. Now I need a way to render all these. I already cut half of the shots I planned to do earlier during different stages of the production. Even then, I wasn't sure about the time. So I needed a method that could render me at least half of the shots without taking much time. I could use a render farm. There are both free and paid sites out there with different pros and cons. But then I found this tool, Google Colab. I have used it before for different reasons but never use it to render a Blender project. What Google Colab does is, it basically gives us a second computer to render our scenes. It's not going to take any physical space. It is in the cloud and you will get the chance to access it through your browser. Let's see how I did it. First, I need to set some setting. In the first cell, I download the correct Blender version I use in my project. Then I connect Google Colab to my Google Drive. After that, I keep a copy of the downloaded Blender on my Google Drive. This way I don't want to download Blender every time I run Colab. In the next cell, I bring Blender setup back to Colab from Google Drive. Remember, these two cells only need to run once unless we change our Blender version. After that, I packed my project and uploaded it to Google Drive and set the render settings in the next few cells. Then run the final cell to start rendering. This way I can finish a shot and let it render on my browser while I am working on another shot. I have all of my PC for that. Well, all of my PC minus Google Chrome. I need to switch to a different browser. Obviously, this method has a good amount of pros and cons, but in this kind of project, it did save me some valuable time. Instead of finishing everything and rendering for the next few days, I can do both at the same time. This basically means I get more time to work on each shot. But before you get too excited, just know this is not some crazy fast rendering option. It has an okay speed but not anything crazy fast. If you want to learn more and maybe try this, check this public article on my Patreon page or check out this amazing channel to learn more about Colab and Cloud GPU rendering. So these are my 4 tips for your next project. I started the project thinking I won't be too ambitious and I failed miserably. Yes, I did a lot of things right, but on the same time I wish I spent a little more time in certain shots. So don't be too ambitious or even less ambitious. It will take some trial and errors, but try to find that sweet spot. This has been a different video to what I usually do on my channel, but as usual, I hope you learned something cool, something useful. I mean, that's what we like to do. We not only create stuff, we let you create with us. Visit our Gumroad page for some free stuff, and if you'd like to see how I created this suit up animation or even this logo animation, check these videos out. So hit that like button, comment your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe to HellFX Learn so you won't miss out when the next video drops. Until next time,